Welcome to the final Victoria 3 update for 2022. There'll be time cards below if you'd like to jump around between each section, but we've got some spicy stuff, like changes to the tech tree, museums, archaeology, and all sorts of wonderful things that go along with that, and some changes to the map and the user experience, all of which could already actually be added in the game as of the last little patch, or may be added in future. Specifically, we're looking at patch 1.2. Anyway, there'll be time cards below if you'd like to bounce around between the sections, and after you've liked the video, I guess we can just jump straight in. For context, we're looking at some experimental and prototype features that the team at Paradox Victoria 3 have been working on sort of as a part of their personal development time, but also as part of this game jam, where they get to go off and make some wonderful and crazy and actually very practical and real things as well. They do make a note here that not all of these features will make it into the game. Thankfully, they do provide some clarity for each one, so we have a pretty good idea about how they feel about them. And the other thing to note is that the game jam, quote, hasn't taken any scheduled time away from bug fixing, UX, feature improvements, and balance changes. That's for you down in the comments section below. Now let's move in and talk about the specific features. The first, as you can see, is probably the most simple out of the three main things that we'll discuss today, and it's all about the map and the user experience with the map, to make it more of a living experience and more of a living world. In the first image, we see paved roads being upgraded from dirt roads once the player has researched them, a nice touch most certainly. Next, we hear hints that items along the roads, railroads and sea lanes that could be reflective of time, so other things changing in the map depending on the time of game. And then in the last screenshot, we sort of get another little feel for that, a living world. Finally, though, with an actual sort of implemented gameplay improvement, we see an image where a building's being highlighted on the map. The idea here is that we'll feel more connected to the buildings, the growing user interface and experience if we can see exactly where it is. The proof will be in the pudding on this one, but it's a nice suite of visual changes to the game, and that's actually about it there for this first one. Like I say, probably the least extreme of the lot, and probably something that we'll see in future. The team say that adding more context and detail to the map, making it feel like the country's changing and evolving, is something they'd like to continue to improve. It doesn't sit at the top of their priority list, but we should expect to see, quote, such visual details bringing historical, immersive flavour to the game eventually, end quote. They also go on to say that this kind of thing will be sometime in 2023. Here they're ecstatic about the building highlighting functionality since it gives you a much closer conceptual connection between the UI and the map. A bit more work is needed, but they'll definitely be looking at it again sometime in 2023. And that's all for user interface map-based changes. Now let's get into the gameplay, the gritty detail. This group of the game jam have actually, luckily enough, already had their change implemented into the game as of a patch that released at the time of recording yesterday, patch 1.1.2. And as you can see on screen, it adds some government quick select options. Basically, here are three options, the best three options for your legitimacy, and you can quickly select them, throw the parties in that you need. Honestly, this is a wonderful quality of life improvement. I'd love to see more and more things just like this. And as they talk about, essentially this is about getting around that puzzling factor. Or if you were like me, click that one in, click that one out, click that one in, click that one out, and wait until it works, right? But either way, they go on to say that Victoria 3 isn't really supposed to be a puzzle game, so let's make the computer do the heavy lifting here. When you click the Reform Government button, there'll now be a load of options. The game runs through every single valid government combination and sorts them by legitimacy. The top three options are then available for us to quickly select, but of course you can still fine-tune it. So if there's a party you want in particular, you can take the best quick select option and then add another party in. It works well with the constantly reforming and developing legitimacy system. I've already made plenty of videos about that, so I'm not going to go into the detail here. Now that we've got that side thought out of the way, something that's actually already in the game, let's get back to some more experimental game jam features. And this one, I think, is my favourite. Hear this. We spent our game jam week developing a new feature, museums. Now, I can hear you yawning, those of you who don't like museums. Fair enough. They can be hit or miss. but this is quite a spicy addition to the game, something a bit different. Their goal was to represent the 19th and 20th century obsession with plundering the world for other people's priceless cultural treasures as a game mechanic. It's the first time I'm reading that. It's quite interesting. In your museum, you can exhibit artifacts for prestige and propaganda. And here we see an image of what the museum will look like. Of course, it's a normal kind of building, but it has some interesting slots. One production method, and then some artifacts hidden within it. In this image, it's the Mask of Tutankhamun, and it gives plus 100 prestige. Not too shabby at all. Delving into the detail a little bit, and we can see that each country has one museum and it's built in their capital state. So this isn't the kind of thing that you're going to be building all over the place. It's a special one-off building for your capital. It'll have a limited number of artifact slots for our masks, gold doubloons, or what have you, and their sort of effectiveness, or indeed how many slots there'll be, more importantly, is determined by the number of museums, production methods, and also the technologies that sit behind it, including a spicy new archaeological technology. Archaeology, that's what it's called. That'll allow us to recover artifacts from expeditions and, quote, other gameplay content. Perhaps that refers to events. I'm sure there are a few ways that they could go about it. It would be really interesting if they could be tradable or swappable, but I might be dreaming too far ahead on that one. They've also experimented a bit with a new type of expedition. Unlike the exploratory ones you may have already gone on, the archaeological expeditions work a little bit different. You don't need to worry about peril as it continues to go on and dig, but instead strike a balance between how aggressively or recklessly do you want to dig for it. Speeding up your recklessness will ensure that you'll be digging or discovering faster, which will allow you to complete the expedition before funding is cut off. But, of course, if you go too hard and fast, you risk damaging the site and being unable to reap the rewards. Nice touch. I like it a lot, and if they can get this working in the game, it will add a point of difference from most of the other building-based, even event-based mechanics. Then on specific expeditions, we hear about the historical expedition that you've seen used to excavate the Pharaoh Tutankhamun's tomb. Very interesting. And this is, of course, bringing in events and history and a lot of other things that players have rightly been wanting more of in Victoria 3. They go on to say that upon researching the new technology and, of course, securing a relationship with Egypt, you can dispatch an expedition to the Valley of the Kings, a strategically lootable spot. The goal, of course, is to secure other people's priceless treasures, and you can go about it any way you like, but it does bring about more events and that recklessness mechanic as well. And of course, all of it is put against the clock. In-game events will come up to kind of mimic this as well. Here you can see the mummy's curse. Will we entertain such foolish superstitions, or will we devote some time to calming the team down before moving ahead? Interesting decisions that will hopefully feed into a much more broader and stronger story behind this archaeological storyline anyway. The challenges of pushing for exploration versus the recklessness of bowling the place down continue to show up, and that race against the clock ever more important, and we can see some more events that they've highlighted in the diary here too. And then, of course, at the conclusion of the event, you may very well be left with prestige, treasures to house in your museum, or maybe some unfortunate endings. It looks like there are many ways that this could go, and I hope that this really gets pushed through and added into the game down the line, because it looks like a bit of fun. Unfortunately, of course, this feature's future is somewhat murky. At the moment, Paradox have left that one as something that's really interesting and maybe something we delve deeper into in the future. That one is, unfortunately, out of all of the things we're talking about in this video, the one that they've committed the least to, i.e. the least likely to happen, basically, or at least anytime soon. The final team, and with more tangible results for us as players, looked toward the tech tree. Basically, they wanted to fix a whole load of things, not just user interface like increasing the text size, camera view, color-coded tabs, but a lot more than that. Let's take a look at their proposed new offering, some big changes that are coming to the tech tree. They show all unlocks of a tech directly on the tech within the tree, not only on the tooltip. They're also now grouped by icon and type, and have their own group tooltip, a nice user interface change. It's when we look at the actual tree overall, though, that you see really significant things. Already researched technology has a paper brown look. Researchable texts show up in green. Currently researched texts in blue, and ones that are non-researchable are greyed out in a dark grey or black. Apologies to the colourblind folks in the room. Either way, it does look a lot nicer when we see it on display. The technologies look a bit more user-friendly, the icons less bloated, easier to read, and ultimately the tree feels easier to interpret as well. From the design side, they had a lot of goals they wanted to achieve, all, as you can see on screen, about how we interact and understand the tree. We should be able to queue up the next research. Yes, please. Queue unlocked research, several texts, locked research, and there are a variety of other things that they wanted to achieve here as well, like clear visual feedback, to be able to remove text from the queue, not just add them, to have it so that shift-clicking a text will put it in the queue. All sorts of other things that you can imagine that would feed into the process. And they go on to say that they made it fairly far. Making it to point 9 on their list, it shows that it could work, and they show that too. The example that they talk through is, what if I just clicked on flamethrowers because I want fire? And that queued everything up that I needed to do it. And as we can see on screen, it does actually do just that. While it may look a little bit in your face, I think that this is a much better addition. You can see a queue up in the top, easily selectable, removable, etc., and then a more user-friendly tree. These changes look really good. I'd like to see these from day one. Let's make it happen, Paradox. And the good news at the end is that the tech tree improvements, drastically increasing the usability, of course, are coming in version 1.2. So the next free patch that we're expecting at the start of 2023, or, maybe somewhere within that first quarter-ish, we'll have at least those tech changes. We already have the changes to government and legitimacy. They're interested in further changes to UI, and we might have to wait a while for our museums. And that concludes the developer diaries for the year. They'll be back with more after the summer holidays. Sometime mid to late January, with more details about the future for Victoria 3 and, as I mentioned, that free 1.2 patch update. Thank you so much for joining me as I've covered not just this, but all of the Victoria 3 news since it's released. I enjoyed covering it, and hopefully you enjoy coming along for the ride. I'll see you next time.